So it's DAF Samach Gimel Lamed Aleph. We're learning Eruvin Uzecha Nishmas Salim's father, Shimon ben Avraham Halevi, and Uzecha Nishmas. What's his name? Alta Aaron ben Avram Tzvi. They should have Neshamas, Aliyah's Neshama. So the Gemara, Rabbi Nuna Oire Becharda the Argis. Rabbi Nuna Paskin the Halacha in the town of Charda the Argis, and it was Bishani the Rav Chizda. It was when Rav Chizda's Rebbe was still alive, but since it was in a different city, he paskined. Ravina Sar Sachkina Bibabel. Ravina checked the knife for shchita to see if there's any begimos on it. In other words, in Bavel, even though his Rebbe Rav Ashi was in Mosa Mechasya, but since they were not in the same town, so he paskined, even though they were in the same country in Bavel, so he still paskined. Amalei Rav Ashi, so his Rebbe heard about it. He says, "My time Ovid Marhachi, I'm your Rebbe. How could you go ahead and paskin if they rabbi?" Amalei, but for Rav Nuna, Becharta the Argis. Rav Nuna paskined in the town Charta the Argis, even though Bishani Rav Chizda, even though Rav Chizda was alive. So just like he did it, so I also did it because I was in a different city. Amalei, no, loy oiri itmar. We learned that Rav Nuna loy oiri, not that ori that he did. He did not. That's the way we had it. So Amalei, Ravina said back to Rav Ashi, no, itmar oiri, itmar the loy oiri. Some people learn he did, and some people did learn that he didn't do it. I had basically, where does he get his Messiah really? From his Rebbe. His Rebbe himself is saying loy oiri, and he's going ahead and saying I did learn. So the Gemara now says Bishani de Rav Huna Rebbe Hud the loy oira. In other words, when Rav Huna, his Rebbe, was alive, that's when he did not paskin. But va'oire b'shanei the Rav Chizda. So even though there's two different girsas, so Rav Nuna, in other words, when Rav Chizda was alive, in other words, he did, but Rav Huna died, his Ikar Rebbe. Why? Because Rav Chizda, even though Rav Chizda did teach Rav Nuna things, but still the Talmud Chaver de Lehave. They were also like Chavrusas. So in other words, even though Rav Chizda really was Rav Nuna's Rebbe, because he learned, Rashi says that he taught him Chadav or Yoser, but still they learned together on the same level. So therefore, V'ana, so Ravina says too, just like Rav Nuna was a Talmud Chaver of Chizda, and therefore he was a lot of Paskin, so Ana, Ravina says, I checked this knife, because Nami Talmud Chaver de Marana, I'm a Talmud Chaver, I'm like one of the best Talmid. Amar Rav. Suver, my Rabbanan, so even though you're not allowed to paskin a shaila in front of your Rebbe. If your Rebbe is there, you have to give cover to your Rav. Your Rebbe is supposed to paskin. But if the shaila is for yourself, in other words, you're a tzuvim rabbanu chazal nafshe. If you're checking the knife for yourself, not for the butcher that's in business, right? But for yourself, you have your own animal and you want to go ahead and do shchita, you don't have to call your Rebbe. Since you're a tzuvim rabbanan, you can check it on your own.
Yeah, but you don't have to announce it at the time.
You're not announcing. When you're doing it for yourself, you don't want to make an announcement. People are going to come and eat too much, right? You have your own animal. You want to keep it quiet, right? So you do it for yourself.
Do it for yourself. So
the Gemara, Ravina ikla lemechuza. Ravina was traveling and he came to the town Mechuza. And Isa, so he came into the hotel. So the hotel keeper heard, oh, Ravina's there, big Rosh Hashiva. So Isa shpuze sakine. The hotel owner brought his knife to check for Ravina if it's kosher or not. And he showed him the knife. Amalei, so Ravina says, Zil amte l'Rava. You can't show it to me, you have to bring it to my Rebbe, Rava. Amalei, l'sava le'mar hadam Rava tzuvim rabban chazal nafshe. Don't you hold what Rava said? Your Rebbe said that a Talmud Chacham for himself, he could check. You're eating here in the dining room at the hotel, right? So you're checking really for yourself. Amalei, no. I checked into the hotel. It's really, I'm buying it. It's really for the hotel caterer that I'm checking it for. Now I'm buying it from him. It's just like going into a butcher and buying it, so therefore I'm not allowed to check. It's really not l'nafshe. Basically, he was giving him the message, I'm on vacation now, don't bother me, basically. I'm here at the hotel relaxing. So look to Gemara now. Rab Lazar bar Hagroini, Rab Abba bar Tachlifa. So these two Rabbanim, Ikla, they came lebei Rav Acha berei de Rav Ika. They came to the house of Rav Acha berei Rav Ika. But it was Ba'asrei the Rav Acha bar Yaakov, in the town of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. So, Boy Rav Acha, Berei Rav Ika, and always the balabas of the house, Ika Lemebet Ilka Tulsi, he had two Choshev Rabbanim that came to his house, so he wanted to make the best Ilka Tulsi, Rashi says. It's like the third born, whatever, there's different ways, but a good stick of flesh, he wanted to make them. And he wanted to shecht it. So Isis Sekine, Bekomachvalahum. So he brought his knife to shecht it, and he showed it to Rab Lozer, these two Rabbanim. He wanted to show it to them as the knife kosher, so I could shecht this piece of meat. So Amalei Rav Acha bar Tachlifa Leilechish Le'Saba. In other words, so that one of the Rabbanim is, instead of Rav Abba, he's Rav Acha bar Tachlifa. He says, aren't you chayshes that you have your Rebbe here? How could you go look at it? Amalu Rab Lazar Maragroini. So he says, no. In other words, I could. This is for myself. I'm going to be eating it, so I could look at the knife, even though my Rebbe's here. So Chazeh, he actually looked at the knife and he paskined, but the Anash, he got punished since his Rebbe was there. He shouldn't have gone ahead and paskined. So the Anish Rab Lazar Maragroini, so he got punished. I think more. Why did he get punished? He could look for himself. In other words, if he's passing for himself, this piece of meat he's going to be eating. So Mora said, no, here it was a little different. Shani Asam de Askila bichvodo. In other words, once already the conversation went, aren't you chayshes for your Rebbe? So in other words, once that conversation started, he should have said, yes, I got to give cover to my Rav. Even though al pi halacha he's allowed to look at it, but once the people were talking about your Rebbe's in the house, show it to him, he should have stuck and said, I'm not going to paskin. So like Rashi says, lo hoye lo lezalzel b'davar. Iboy seima shani Rav Acha bar Yaakov the muflag. In other words, Rashi says, harbi moite yisakein the chacham. In other words, he was the gadol hador. So even though he is allowed to look at the knife for himself, but still he should have gave covet to the gadol hador, his Rebbe, and that's why he was punished. The Gemara says, Amar Rava, will afrushe mi yisurei. In other words, if you're sitting in front of your Rebbe, and you see somebody in the classroom, let's say, doing something, an avera, right? And your Rebbe is looking at the boy, he's not saying anything. You are allowed to go ahead and jump up and say something, lafrushe mi yisurei, to stop somebody from doing an avera. I feel befun of, even though your Rebbe's there, shapi dami, you're allowed to do it. In other words, Rashi says, Ra Talmud Adam Roitz Lava Avera. If you see, you're a Talmud in front of your Rebbe, you see a man in there doing an Avera of a Rabbi Sham, Vishaisik, and he's quiet. So Mutter still a Talmud Likvoitz Uligwar boy, you could stop that person from doing an Avera. Gemara says, Ravina Havi Yosef Kamed Rav Ashi. In Chazil how Gavra the Koasale Lechamre Bitzinsa Bishapsa. In other words, Rav Ravina was sitting with his Rebbe, and Ravina saw this man tying his donkey to a tree on Shabbos. And Rashi says, you cannot tie your animal to a tree on Shabbos al Shvus. In other words, there's an Isser of Shvus, because you might come and climb up on the tree. So Ravina screamed at the person, stop what you're doing. And the person did not listen to him. So what did Rabbeinu say? That person is such a chutzpahdik. This person that's tying his donkey to the tree, he should be in chayrim. So those words are really like a psak. So even though his Rebbe is there, right? Rav Ashi is sitting there, Rabbeinu went ahead and made a psak that person should be in chayrim. In other words, is this like a chutzpah? In other words, what that he deserved really to get into cherem because he didn't listen to us, listen to me. Amalei. So Rav Ashi said, "Ein chachma, ve'ein tfuna, ve'ein eitz leneged Hashem."
I think it's asking whether he's allowed to said it's going to be excommunicated.
He did it already. Rashi said, "Amalei Ravina Rav Ashi, al milsat avidach kamach." What I just did, now he's thinking about it. Maybe I shouldn't have made a psak.
Right.
He went ahead and did the cherem.
Right.
So now he's asking his Rebbe, maybe I was wrong. Was it hashtem yav kerusa chutzpah alo? So Amalei Kai Gavna, that's what he says. Kaprus Amalei in Chachma Vein Tvuna Vein Eitzel Neged Hashem. Kol Makom Shesh Beichil Hashem and Yicholkin Kabel L'Rav. You go ahead, you have to stop a person from doing an avera. But really, he didn't stop him, but he went ahead to the next step and put it in. Yeah, but then that's not the problem. The problem was that he went ahead and put him in Cherem. The Cherem part was the psak halacha in front of his Rebbe, which he shouldn't have done. But his Rebbe said it's okay. Amar Rava. The fun of.
Well, he didn't say it's okay. What he said was it's good that you stop them from.
He says don't worry about giving respect to a teacher.
Right, for stopping him from an avera, not from.
It's just the first part.
Yeah.
But that's what his answer was. He asked him about when I put him in Cherem, was that okay what I did? And he says, comes to Chil Hashem in Kol and Kabel Rav. It's good that you stop this person and also put him in Cherem so other people shouldn't do this avera. He shouldn't do this avera.
It's not clear from the Gemara, from the way you can also.
Do you have an art scroll?
Yeah.
And what does the art scroll say?
The art scroll does. He's what he's saying is true. It didn't. I believe what you're saying is correct. However, he says it's not perfectly clear what it means.
The footnote says.
Anyway, we're on camera now, so let's continue on. Okay.
You want to hear the footnote?
Yes, go ahead.
It says this implies that if that had not been the case, whatever that means, Ravina would have been mistaken. Although Ravina was only a Talmud Chaver of Rav Ashi, since he was in Rav Ashi's presence, it would nevertheless be wrong to render a decision.
Right. Okay.
So you're still saying that second part was wrong, I think.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it means that. I think it means it's right. But
I'm a Rava. The fun of, Rava comes along and says, with fun of, if your Rebbe is sitting in the same room. So before we were talking about people in a different city. If your Rebbe's in one city, you're in another city. You're in Thornhill, let's say he's down by Lawrence Avenue, you're allowed to make a psak, right? But here, b'fun of, your imam is in the same room, usher, you cannot paskin in front of your Rebbe, and therefore, b'chayiv misa. You'll be chayiv misa b'dei shemayim, right? So Rashi says, the fun of usher, lohir is b'chayiv misa b'dei shemayim, v'hoda rava lavla frushim isr. What Rava was doing was not to stop a person from an Isser, because if it's been an Isser, we just said that even though your Rebbe is sitting there, you're allowed to do it. But it's talking about Bali Yishal. Rava is saying his memory here, but fun of us, it means if somebody's coming to ask you a Shaila, and your Rebbe is in the room, you have no right to pass in front of your Rebbe, even though your Rebbe is quiet, and you'll be Chayiv Misa. But Shalai b'fun of, if your Rebbe is not sitting there, he's not in the room, or it's in a different city, Usser, but Ein Chayiv Misa. But you're not chayiv misa. So for the Gemara, we should lay b'fun of loy. In other words, if your Rebbe is not there, you're not going to be chayiv misa. Ayva Tanya. So we're saying shalei b'fun of, you shouldn't do it, but you're not chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. But about Tanya, we learned the brisa. Rav Lazar, Aimer loy meisa b'nei Aaron, at shahar Allah b'nei Moshe. This is one reason why Nadav and Avihu died, because they were Meir Halacha b'fnei Moshe. Rabban. My Darish. So what did the sons darshan? They said, "V'nasnu b'nei Aaron hakoyin eish al mizbeach." In other words, b'nei Aaron have to start the fire in the mizbeach. Amru, they said, Afa pisha eish yoredes min hashemayim. Even though there's going to be a fire on the mizbeach automatically min hashemayim, still mitzvah lehevi min hahedyet. The kohen himself has to light it. So they passed in front of Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, so even though they were right, but they still should not have said this in front of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe, and therefore they were chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. The Gemara says, "The Talmud echad haylei Rab Lezer shahar alach b'fanav." Rab Lezer had a Talmud that also passed in front of him. Amar Rab Lezer l'imi shalom ishtoi. So when Rab Lezer came home that day, he told his wife, "To me ani im yotzeh zeh shnasai." I wonder if this person will survive this year, if he'll still live, because he had no right to paskin. And unfortunately, that Talmud, since he paskin b'fanav, he was chayiv b'dei shemayim, and he did die that year. Amar Allah. So the wife remembered the story during the year. Oh, he died. Navi ata. What, are you Navi? Amar Allah. So Rab Lezer told his wife, "Loi Navi anoichi, v'loi ben Navi anoichi. El lekachnu kubleini kol amor Allah b'nei Rabbi chayiv misa." So from this Gemara, do you see that even the Rebbe knew that the Talmud did something wrong? He couldn't stop. There's no mechila really. In other words, on this Indian of Meir halacha. In other words, the Talmud hasn't died. Because why didn't he be Michael right now? Now that he knows something's going to happen. You can't be Michael on Kvaydai.
Exactly.
The Amar Rabbi Barchana Rabbi Yechanan, Oisa Talmud, His name was Yehuda ben Gurya Shemo. That Talmud, his name was Yehuda ben Gurya. Vayirachak mimeno Sholos Barsois. He was away from his Rebbe. He wasn't right in front of him. He was Sholos Barsois away from Reb Lezer. But for the Gemara, it says b'fanav have. In other words, it says Shehayir Halacha b'fanav. So what do you mean Sholos Barsois? That's quite a distance, right? So no, v'hayirachim mimeno Sholos Barsois. Gemara says b'fanav have. No, it was. I v'hayirachim mimeno Sholos Barsois. Guy says that he was away, right? So l'taimeich. If you're saying that you take everything literally exactly what it says, why do I have to know what his father or his name was? It was a Talmud. The only reason why we say all what happened there was that people should say, it didn't happen, it didn't happen. No, it did happen, in other words. And he was mamish b'fanav. If you moira halacha in front of your Rebbe, a snake should come and bite you. Your role to happen. Shenemar v'yan Eliyahu ben Barachel Abuzi v'yoyim etzar ani liyamim. In other words, I am young. Al kain zochalti hiksiv am chemas zochale afar. In other words, a snake is called zochale. He's always eating the afar, the dust. So in other words, I should be punished because I paskin, and I should be punished through a snake biting me. In other words, Ziri Amar B'Chanina, he's Nikra Chayta. If you marry halach from a rabbi, you call that chota, a sinner. Shenema belibi tzofanti imrosecha. I stopped myself from saying something in front of my Rebbe, so I shouldn't sin. Because mashma, if he would have said something, then he would be considered a chota. Rabbi Menuna Rami, he has to steer it. Ksivish doesn't pasuk belibi tzavanti mersecha. I stopped myself from saying something in front of my Rebbe, but then it says v'ksiv v'sharesi tzedek b'kal rav. That tzedek means divrei Torah. I did speak b'kal rav in front of my Rebbe. So one pasuk says you shouldn't, and then the second pasuk says it's okay. So lo kasha kam bisman sheira hayiri kayim by David HaMelech. In other words, Rashi says Rabbi Ira Hayiri was his Rebbe. The David Rav LeDavid. He was his Rebbe. So when he was alive, David HaMelech saying Belibi Tzavmanti, I stopped myself from saying. But Kam Bisman Shein Avir Hayiri Kiyim, when he passed away, then I started passing the halachas, and that is B'Shirasi Tzedek B'Kal Rav. Omer of Abba Bar Zavda Kol Anosein Matnasa B'Koyin Echad. If you're supposed to give matanis, in other words, the kohen, and you give it all to one kohen. You like one kohen that is a friend of yours. I'm giving him everything. So the Gemara says that's not right. Maybe Rav La'ilam. That brings a famine to the world. Shenema iri hayi kohen leDavid. But the Gemara, his Rebbe was only a kohen for David. David who the havi kohen? What kula alma lahaya loy? A kohen is a kohen, right? Like the joke is, my father was a kohen, my Zayda was a kohen, I want to be a kohen, you're a kohen. Ella shahi mishagale matnasav. It means David. In other words, David was ERU is his kohen because David gave him all the matanas. By that, because by Hirav he made David, because he only gave it to one kohen, even though he was his Rebbe and he has a right to give it, but still you should share it amongst others. Rab Lezer Omer Marid Noish Megdulasai. When you only give it to one kohen, actually Marid Noish LeKohen, Rashi says this goes back to Le'ilkoi. This is not something to do with the kohen. Now it's talking about Moir Halacha for the rabbi. If you Moir Halacha, Marid Noish Megdulasai. Shenema says Vayema Lazar HaKohen Alanshe Atzava. He was giving them halachas. In other words, when they came back from war. Afagav de Amma Lahu Lachi Abba Tziva. Even though he gave covet to Moshe, in other words, his uncle, that he said HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him the Torah, but he didn't tell me directly the Torah. But still, since he paskened halachas, Elazar HaKohen was punished that he went down Migdula. The Ksiv says in Pasuk, Elazar HaKohen Ya'amoid. In other words, it says that Rashi says it says in Pasuk that eventually Yeshua is going to have shaylas to Elazar. But Le'ashkan Yitzchak Yeshua. We don't find, Rashi says, La'arkan Misas Moshe, the Yitzchak Yeshua La'azar Lishal Le'kol. Yeshua didn't need Elazar. So that was Yorim Glasai. In other words, if he wouldn't have passed from Moshe, then Yeshua would have needed him. But since he was punished, in other words, therefore Yeshua never came and asked the Shalat to Allah.
At least he didn't die. So maybe because he quoted the name of his Rebbe.
Right, that's what the Gemara says, Afagah. Very good. Amar Rab Levi, called him Maisav Mila Kamei Rabbi. In other words, if somebody answers, Rashi's Maisav is Meisha Devar Meir Halacha, is Azal Lishol Beloy Velat. He will go, here's not the Gehenna, usually Shaul is Gehenna, but Rashi says here means Lemisa. He will die without children. Shenemar Vayan Yeshua Ben Nun, Shari's Moshe Bebechurav, Vayomer Adoini Moshe Kaleim. So this has to do with Eldad and Medad, when they were Misnachane B'machane, when they were giving Nevuah. So Yeshua told Moshe, maybe they have no right, they should be destroyed because they have no right to do it. And that's what Rashi says to Kaleim. And it was Lakach to Havali Meir Halacha, right? So how was Yeshua punished? B'ksiv, since he was trying to say something in front of his Rebbe, B'ksiv Nun B'noi Yeshua B'noi. In other words, at the end, Rashi says, Ubasa Yeshua Lechoshev Bein. In other words, it doesn't say anybody who Yeshua's children were. So he must have been punished without children. Upligi de Rav Abba. In other words, this argues in Rav Abba Bar Papa. The Omer Rav Abba Bar Papa Leinenash Yeshua Ella B'Shvil Shebitel as Yisrael Laila Achaz Meperi Yirivra. The reason why Yeshua was punished and died without children, not because he was Meir Halacha in front of his Rebbe Moshe, but he was Mevatel the Jewish people from having prudent relationships with their wives for one night when they were in war. Shenema state in Pasuk Vahi B'Yos Yeshua B'Yerichai. When Yeshua was in Yerichai, all of a sudden Vayisa Einav, when they were surrounding Yerichai to attack, it says Yeshua went ahead and looked up, and Vayar, who did he see? He saw a Malach. It says V'char, Rashi says V'char Shlufa B'yadai. The exhibit says V'yemelech Ani Sar Tzva Hashem Ata Basi. I came to punish you for now. In other words, Amar Loi Emosh B'taltim Tomashil Barabai. When you were in war, you went to war, you will mevatel the carbon tamash of arbaim. But now, at nighttime, you're not going to the base medrash v'achsav b'taltim talmud Torah, and now you are not learning Torah too. You're mevatel talmud Torah. All the soldiers are not learning Torah. So al ezem bas. So in other words, Yeshua asked the Malach, "What are you coming for? We did these. We did averas. Which one are you coming? V'char b'shlufa b'yada. Why are you coming to destroy us? Amalei ata basi. I'm coming for now that you're not learning Torah. Miyad it says later on, Vayelach Yeshua b'layla hu. In other words, instead of staying at war, he went b'toich emek. He went back to the base medrash to learn Torah. V'amar Rabbi Yechanan melamed shehalach be'umkei shel halacha. So in other words, now, that night, they sinned. In other words, they were mevatel the Tamash Abayim, they were mevatel Talmud Torah. But the Gemiri, we also know, the Chozman Sha'aron V'Shchina Shruyin Shleivim Mekayman, when they were at war, they took the Aron with them to fight the war. So when they were that night fighting the war, they still had the Aron there. So the Shekhinah is there. So automatically, in other words, when the Shekhinah Shrui Shleib Kaiman Asur B'Tashon Amita, all the soldiers were not allowed in Tashon Amita. So he was mevatel Puravu that night. And at that, he was punished. Now, Rashi, let's look at Rashi. There's a long Rashi here.
They took their wives with them when they went out to battle?
What's that?
They took their wives with them when they went out to battle?
Maybe. They traveled a lot. Okay.
I know, but they are.
So Rashi, Yeshua Rashi, Midiksiv Echar B'Shlufa B'Yadai, Nechlal Del Prania is Ba. In other words, the Malach came to punish. The Ata Basi, the Carmelite, Hachi Carmelite. This is what the Malach is saying. This is what the Malach is saying. This is what the Malach is saying. There was another avera they did. Mahi hachi kamalei. Emosh betaltim tamid shel bein arbaim. You were mevatel tamid be'eref betaltim atamid achshav shechashecha. It's nighttime. After mevatelim, you should have gone to the base medrash and learned Talmud Torah. V'shaya sukim and melchama b'yoyim lo eis lasik b'Torah. So in other words, during the day, okay, you're at work, you're going to work,
Right.
but you have to go and make sure you convey to the Torah whatever time you have. El Balayla. The Malach came, the Talmud Torah, the Ksiv Kra Achrina, the Melchemta Shel Ai, Shahaisa Achra. This is another Melchama. Rashi says. It says, "Vayelech Yeshua Balayla Ahu B'Toich Emkai." Rabbi Yechon Melamed Shalom Onkev Shalacha. The Gemira the Chosman Sha'arim Mishkina Shoyin Shlevi Kaiman Vayisa Laila Shalchika Mamalach Haymevatim Talmud Torah B'Shvil Shahia Orvim Alier. They surrounded the city. So they were still there. The Aron was still there at night. They didn't put the Aron back in Shiloh. The Mekai Begilgal. And that's why he was punished. Okay, back to the Gemara. Am Rabbi Shmuel by Inya Bishmei the Rab. Gadol Talmud Torah Yosem Akrabis Tamidim. In other words, Talmud Torah is even greater than being makriv the Talmud Sheben Arbaim, the Amalei Ate Basi, because the Malach is saying, I'm coming to you to destroy you for the Bittul Talmud Torah. Amar Bruna Amar Rav, Kla Yashim Bikila. If a person sleeps in a room, Sheish V'Ishtai Shruim Boy, that there's a husband, a man and wife living in that room, so therefore by you being there, you're causing them not to do Pruruvu. So all about Kosev Aimer, it says, Neshei Ami Tegarshain Bebeis Tanugel. In other words, Shavushin Heimimeno. In other words, you are bad. In other words, you cause them not to do Pruruvu. Am Rabbi Yosef, I feel Bishta Nida. Even though that person's wife is a Nida, still you have no right to sleep in that room. Rabbi Hama says, no, Mishta Nidu, Tavalah Bracha. By you being there, they won't do any Averis. But says, no, Velohi. The Adi Idna, Manatre. In other words, let's say you wouldn't have been there. All these years, the guy is already happily married for 50 years. You're going to be I'm going to sleep there. I'm going to stop him from doing Avera. Who took care of him for 50 years beforehand? Everything was Baruch Hashem. They took care of themselves. So here too, since even though they're not allowed to have any tashmish, but still, when a husband and wife are together, their conversation is different, right? By you being there, you're causing, therefore it's time to basically, it's late at night, time to go home. Start the Gemara. In other words, that was his name. So in this Mavoi, he was a guy. Now we're going back to the Perek that we learned in the Perek that if a guy is part of your Chatzer, right? He has a house. The only way that you can make this Eruvi Chatzeris with a guy is you have to rent that Shabbos from the guy. So Gemara says they had this guy, Amar Lei, so they told the guy, we want to rent out your Rishus so we could do our Eruvi Chatzeros and therefore we could carry. But this guy was very stubborn, he did not give it to them. So also Amalei Abaya, they came to the Abaya, Amalahu, this guy is not helping us out. So Amalahu, so Abaya told them, Zil Betila Rishu Saichel. In other words, let's say there were 10 Jews there with the guy. So 9 of you Jews should be Mvafel Yerishus to one Jew there. Right? Ligabichat. Be Mvatel Yerishus to one. So therefore, so now one Jew is living with the guy, right? And therefore, we learned the Yachid the Makim Nachri Loi Aser. It's not Aser.
That was because of Sakona, no?
So that's what Gemara says. Amar Lei, that is very good when a Yachid is there by himself. Amar Lei, mi did habi taimel d'leishchicha de daire. In other words, since a guy will kill you, and you live there by yourself, so therefore, we allow you that Shabbos, so you know you're never going to live there. And it's not going to be a permanent thing. But here you have 9 other families with you, right? Even though Api Halacha they were mevatel, but they're still there. So maybe the guy what? Amalei. No, the whole thing is al tzchia. Amalei kol betur rishusay gabechad is milsle shchicho, where all the families are mevatel to one Jew. That's milsle shchicha, and therefore milsle shchicha like gazru berabana. Now Rashi we have to read this Rashi because if you think about it, when the 9 are mevatel to that one could carry, so it accomplishes something for himself. What is helping the other 9? Chevra, they were mevatel, they can't carry anymore. So really, you're having a problem with the guy, so you're giving all the rights to one. That one is okay, but the other 9
still can't
do anything, right? So that's something to think about here. So Gemara says,
if they're guests of the one, does that allow them then to carry because they're the guests?
Right. So the thing is, are they going to carry from the guys, maybe in the guy's house? right? Or that person's house, but from
Right.
their own house they can't bring anything out. But they could carry from that one, or from the guy's house, they could carry out. So Azal Rav Huna Braid Rabbi Yeshua Amalei Ushmaita Kamei de Rava Amalei. I think this is just going to go on, so I think we should leave this for Shabbos.
Yeah.
Got the job.